Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tinkerverse. So, if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I've been on the hunt for the perfect Class 1 diode laser to supplement all the other lasers in my shop. And I've got some exciting news. Creality reached out to me, and many of you might know Creality from the 3D printer market. And they seem to think that their Falcon2 Pro here might have what it takes to fill that need. So they did reach out to me and asked me to review a laser. They were going to send it to me free of charge, which they did. But they originally were offering me the Falcon2, which was the open frame, regular gantry, open style diode laser. And after some back and forth, I kind of explained to them that, here at the Tinkerverse, I'm really focused on safety. And Class 1 lasers from a diode perspective are all I'm really interested in presenting to my audience. And they said, hey, we got you covered. We've got the Falcon2 Pro here. So they sent this off for review, and I'm going to be doing 2 videos that will take a look at this thing and kind of put it through its paces, and I'll give you my feedback along the way. The Falcon2 Pro offers some serious upgrades over its open frame competitors, and we're going to kind of put it through its paces and see how it stands up in a real workshop environment. In today's video, we're going to cover the initial setup and my first impressions, and in a follow-up video, we'll get into the meat of doing some laser cutting and engraving jobs and really kind of putting this thing through the ringer and seeing what it can and can't do, and see if we can find its limits. If you're looking for a diode laser for your shop, or just want to know how this thing stacks up against the competition, in an ever-growing Class 1 laser space, stick around. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and follow the Tinkerverse so that you can not only catch videos about this machine, but about other machines, as well as the other laser engraving and cutting tutorials and information that we provide along the way. So let's kick things off with a quick montage. We'll do a little 30-second blip here showing unboxing and assembly, and then we'll kind of dig in and see if it's as easy to use this machine as Creality claims. So let's go. Now, let's take a look at some of the specs that make the Creality Falcon2 stand out from its competition. I do have a few notes here I'm going to be referring to, so if I glance down, I'm just making sure that I hit all the points that I wanted to hit here. But first and foremost is the fact that this is a Class 1 diode laser. That means that it's much safer to use than, its Class 4 predecessors, and it's relatively safe to use without protective eyewear, enough that if one of my family members, my daughter, were to walk into the shop while this thing was in operation, I would feel relatively comfortable that I've taken enough safety precautions and followed enough procedure that I wouldn't worry about her getting, exposure to the laser while it's in operation. Do I still recommend you wear safety glasses? Yeah, obviously, just like anything else in the shop. But the risk of exposure is much, much less with a Class 1 than it is with a Class 4. So moving into the laser module itself, the laser module itself is pretty impressive. In its regular, usage configuration, it's a 40-watt diode laser, which is a very impressive laser. I mean, I know that there's 60 watts out there and there's people tickling even higher than that, but I think 40 watts is still a good sweet spot. A 40-watt diode is a beast when it comes to cutting, but in addition, this particular laser module has the ability to put it into a precision mode. So by pressing and holding a button on top, it puts it into precise, and it actually shuts off some of the diodes in the stack. And what that's going to do for you is that's actually going to compress the beam size down and allow you a more precise engraving, as if you were engraving with, say, a 20-watt laser. I don't know how many diodes it turns off. I don't know exactly what the ratio is there, but it does provide a noticeable difference and shrinks down that beam spot size to give me precision that I'm not seeing in the 40-watt mode. So having all that in one laser module is definitely a really nice feature to have at your fingertips. Another feature I really like is the built-in safety monitoring. So the laser module itself, sticking with that, has built-in airflow, fire detection, and dirt detection monitoring, so that if any one of those triggers, either insufficient airflow for the job, or a flare-up that could lead to fires, or if there's soot and dirt on the lens that needs to be cleaned up that prevents the laser from operating optimally or potentially even damaging itself, it will trigger an alarm, and it'll actually either prevent you from starting a job, or it'll stop the job in progress until you resolve the situation. So having that built into the laser head itself is a great touch on top of that. Now, as for the work area, this machine has a 400mm by 415mm work surface. And that's plenty of room for most projects. Most home-based projects will fit nicely into that envelope. And in addition to that, in the 400 by 415 work surface is a camera that helps you with placement of your jobs. So whether you're trying to just use up all the scrap material on a board, or whether you're trying to place something down and accurately position it, the built-in camera here mostly has you covered. Now, we'll talk about some of the limitations to the camera in the next video when we talk about, some of the in-depth on the projects, because the camera system, as any fisheye lens camera, is not perfect. But it's not bad for what it is, for the configuration it is. It gets the job done, and I've been happy with it so far. The bed of the laser is a bunch of individual slats that you can configure as you need, and slats I actually like over a honeycomb. Honeycomb, you still get a lot of flashback. So while honeycomb does provide adequate airflow, you get a lot of flashback still, or more so than you get from slats. Slats provide you with that knife edge with a little bit of angle that kind of direct any backflash, or flashback rather, away from the cutting area. And does a fairly good job of reducing the amount of soot and cleanup you have on the back of your workpiece. Does it completely eliminate it? No. But it does a good job of reducing that. Lastly, there's a claim that this thing can do 25,000 millimeters per minute travel speeds. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. I don't know, from a real world performance, I don't know how realistic that is, but we'll touch on that a little bit later in the video. Okay, so now that we've covered the specs, let's kind of talk about some initial observations before we get into the pros and cons. So right off the bat, the frame is nice and heavy, and I mean that in the best possible way. A heavy frame on a laser engraver is going to prevent vibrations and excess movement of the machine during a job that allows you to kind of push the machine a little bit harder than maybe you would be able to with a lighter machine. So it keeps the vibration down, it keeps it nice and steady on the work surface. Not a lot of backlash or noise gets introduced from the machine not being stable on your work surface. So I would expect nothing less from Creality. It is a nice beefy heavy-duty machine. So I definitely like that. Something else I really have come to like is the sliding lids. So did I think I was going to miss the hinged lids on most lasers? Maybe for the first minute or two. And then I really kind of, took a look at this lid and realized that I have every bit of access to this machine and its internals that I would with a hinged lid, but I don't have the overhead of the hinge lifting up into something that may be above it. So if I'm on a countertop with cabinets above, or I'm, a shelving or something like that, this machine does not exceed its footprint beyond what you see here. There's no need to provide clearance over the top, and I still have full access to everything I need to. So the sliding lid is actually, it's a nice touch, and for some people, that may be a deciding factor of why you might want to go with this over one of its competition. Another plus is the chip tray. So there's a nice big beefy chip tray that it's on rollers, which is You have no idea how awesome that is. You see how easy that is to remove and insert. Other machines that fight you to pull the chip tray out, or you have to lift the machine up and reach under and finagle this thing out of there. Not a problem with the Creality. The Creality has gone above and beyond to give you just this massive chip tray that is roller driven and is, you know, fantastically easy to clean out and maintain. Next up, from an observation perspective, this can be a little polarizing, but it has to do with the focus mechanism. So the focus mechanism for this is a focus block, and it's a manual focus with a couple of thumb screws and adjustment with that. I realize some people prefer automatic focus. I realize some people prefer a motorized Z-axis that can automatically detect the focal distance. I prefer a manual focus because I like having the control. I'm used to being able to set my focus, and if I want to go 2 millimeters out of focus intentionally to achieve a certain, a certain result, it's so much easier to do that manually. It takes me 2 seconds, whereas in software, I got to figure out where to go and how to adjust that focus and override that autofocus. So manual focus, I like it. Now, the argument of kickstand versus focal block. Focal block is it's another piece you have to keep track of, and I get that. Kickstand is nice and integrated, but the kickstand isn't always where you need it to be on a workpiece. So if you've set up a job and you maybe forget to focus and you go to drop the kickstand down, it may not be where you want it to be on the workpiece. Whereas a focal block, I can place that anywhere around the base of the laser head and set my focus right where I want it at any given time. So I actually think that the focal block has something to offer over a kickstand, and I, again, personally prefer manual focus over autofocus. Before getting started, there were a couple things that had to be adjusted on the machine out of the box. The belts were not nearly tight enough, and I went ahead and I ran my first material test card and noticed a lot of backlash. There was a lot of wobbly lines. My text had some serious ghosting and it wasn't lined up properly. And those are all signs of mechanical slop. And so I had to go through and tighten the belts down. There's 2 Y-axis belts and an X-axis belt. Once I tightened those up, and once I tightened up the eccentric nut a little bit on the rail system that holds the laser head in place, most of those problems went away. So just know that just like any machine that you get, when you take it out of the box, you have to do a little bit of fine tuning and I have to do a little bit of tweaking in order to get the best performance out of it. It's not going to be the best performance out of the box, but that doesn't mean you can't get it there with a little bit of just standard maintenance and understanding how to work with that. The last thing I think before I get into some of the pros and cons is that, talking about the speed, they claim 25,000 millimeters per minute. I wasn't able to get more than half of that. 12,000 was my cap. Anything over 12,000 did not have an observable impact on the speed or material testing. So I've reached out to Creality and hopefully I'll get some feedback from them before the next video drops, and I'll be able to provide that feedback, and maybe it's something I can do to make an adjustment to allow this thing to get the speeds that they're advertising. So overall, these are just some of the things I've noticed so far. First impressions. Again, I haven't done any heavy duty jobs with this thing, so we'll see as we go through the next video what gets exposed or what of my concerns maybe are alleviated as non-issues, and we'll see where it goes from there. So let's talk about the pros. These are the things that really kind of stood out so far for me on the Falcon 2 here. First off, obviously, as I talked about, the Class 1 safety. Having interlocks on all of the openings, whether it's the chip tray or the door, having those interlocks with the built-in safety alarms really gives me a peace of mind, and especially in my workshop setting where I've got family, I'm not regulated, I'm not controlled as much as maybe an industrial setting is. So that Class 1 rating to me is huge. Another feature I really do like, I like the built-in camera, and again, as I mentioned earlier, we'll kind of cover some of this in the projects video. Is it perfect? No, but so far it's been perfectly serviceable. I can lay out my work where I want it. I can maximize the use of my material, and as long as I stay close to the center, I can relatively accurately position, you know, an engraving or a cut job over my material where I need it to be. So another pro is on the lid. The fact that the lid is completely see-through all the way around. So this is all, you know, wavelength blocking laser safety acrylic, but it's all 360. So no matter where I am, I have clear access to see the job, whereas maybe some of the lasers where you've got an enclosure that you drop down over it and you have to try and look through a little window and see your job. This gives me access to see my work all the way around. So I really do like that. The switchable laser power supply, you know, is definitely a pro, being able to downgrade from a 40 watt to something less. And again, I don't know exactly what that something less is. I just know that it is a noticeable difference in my test cards and my engraved qualities when I go into precise mode. Not having to switch out the laser module to get more precision is definitely a good thing. The laser being rock solid, you know, a good sturdy build that I'm comfortable is not going to give me problems in the long run. It'll maintain its accuracy better, and just overall it has a good quality feel to it. Another feature that makes life easier, obviously, is that chip tray. You know, having the roller access chip tray, easy to clean and easy to keep maintained, and it's convenient. And you know, as we're talking about convenience, the sliding lid is definitely a win for me. Didn't think I'd like it at first. Actually, I've really come to appreciate what it has to offer. So the sliding lid, I'm going to put that in the pro column. I think that's definitely a good thing. So some configurability, being able to put my exhaust port left or right gives me a little bit more flexibility on where I'm going to put this thing in my workspace. So I like that. All in all, the Falcon 2 Pro has a lot of really nice and solid features that make it a great option, both for hobbyists as well as, you know, small scale professional use. You know, I think it's got the power, it's got the safety, it's got the convenience, and it really has what you need to get the job done efficiently. And we'll see how that carries over into projects as we go. No video review is complete without talking about the cons. And this machine has a couple of cons, you know, and during my initial experiences, you know, I noted a couple down that I want to talk about. And this is cons that I can see before I really get into any heavy work. So there may be more as we go into the next video. There may be less, as some of the cons that I think I see maybe aren't so relevant. So let's talk about the first thing, which is, you know, the fact that it's not tuned out of the box. It's a con if you're expecting this to be a plug and play, take it out, drop it in, plug it in, and go. Spend some time learning the machine, spend some time learning how to perform maintenance on the machine, tighten up your belts, tighten up your eccentric nut on the laser rail, and, you know, just get familiar with the different pieces that you're going to need to maintain in the long run. It is a machine with moving parts. Moving parts need maintenance. But just right off the bat, having to spend more of that time up front than I had expected, I'm just going to put that in the cons column, that if you're a brand new user, something to consider, that you're going to have a little bit of a learning curve there. Another small inconvenience is the need for two USBs. So this has a separate USB port for the camera than it does for the control board. I would really like to have seen that all combined into one output, so that it doesn't tie up two USB ports on my computer or require a USB hub to consolidate all that together. So minor gripe, I know, and it probably won't affect a lot of people. It does me because I hook up other accessories while I'm filming, or just in general, I have other things hooked up to my machine at any given time. So tying up two ports for one laser is, I'm gonna leave that in the cons column, even though it doesn't impact physical usability of the machine. Additionally, as we're talking about ports, there are ports located on both sides of the machine. So you've got air controls and air hose over here, and then your SD card, your USB cable, your power supply and switch are all over here. It's something you have to consider, that you need to add 6 to 8 inches on both sides of the machine. So when you're thinking about where you're going to place this, you can't just look at the footprint of the machine. You have to look at the footprint of the machine plus some additional space for the ports on both sides. I would like to see those all consolidated on one side, or, you know, if we're talking, you know, dream list, make it so I can choose one side or the other. I guess it's possible, you know, so might as well throw it out there as something that I'd like to see. Lastly, the big con in the room is the speed. And again, as I mentioned, I'm going to wait for some feedback from Creality, and we'll cover that in the next video if there's any solution. But right now, this thing only gets half of its advertised speed. And I've done everything I can do to try to get more out of it. And it hits a magical threshold right around 12,000 millimeters per minute, where after that, it just won't go any faster. So if I can get more speed out of this thing, I would like to. Definitely to keep up with its contemporaries that are hitting, you know, double that. They're hitting 50,000 millimeters per minute. They're hitting, 600, 800 millimeters per second of travel speed, not necessarily engraving speed, but at least travel speed for rapid movement. So, you know, I'd like to see Creality be able to keep up with that and at least give me what they're advertised, you know, 25,000 or just over 400 millimeters per second, just to kind of put it in reasonable competition with some of the others out there. So yeah, so we'll find out what that means to real world performance here in the next video. And again, if Creality responds, I'll add it at that point. So, but don't go anywhere. You know, part 2 is coming soon, and make sure that you have subscribed to this channel, hit that bell notification so that you know when I drop the next video. Also stay tuned for, you know, more videos talking about LightBurn and you know, even some of the other softwares make it, and XCS and maybe even some 3D printing as we're kind of venturing into Creality again. You know, I have some Creality 3D printer that we can play around with and kind of mix and match some mediums. You know, so definitely stay tuned, and we'll see if some of the tweaks that I have talked about for this machine are going to pay off. If you're enjoying this review, again, give me a thumbs up. Make sure that that you are following the channel. And thanks for watching. As always, keep tinkering, stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time around.